Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar on efficient engineering and operations of pharmaceutical plants. My name is David Humphrey, and I am an analyst with ARC Advisor Group. I will be moderating today's one-hour webinar, and I look forward together with you to learning more about using good asset information and compliance management practices. The format of today's webinar is simple. Three gentlemen have agreed to present their views on different aspects of our topic. My colleague, Dr. Valentin De Leo, will start with a 10-minute presentation on the results of his research for a white paper on improving profitability of life sciences industries using good asset information and compliance management practices. Valentin will be followed by Mr. Christoph Jauslin, who is the head of engineering IT at Novartis, and he will talk for about 15 minutes about integrated engineering at Novartis and will describe how Novartis has implemented electronic lifecycle documentation on a global level using the COMOS solution from Siemens. Here's our agenda. Finally, Mr. Joachim Eilers of Siemens will summarize how integrated lifecycle management can be enabled using COMOS, including how data consistency and data reuse can be ensured and what business benefits we can expect. After we hear from our three speakers, I will open up the floor to questions from you, the audience. To start, please let me introduce my colleague here at ARC, Dr. Valentin De Leo, who will talk about improving profitability of life science industries using good asset management information and compliance management practices. Valentin, turn it over to you.
I'm very happy to share with you all the research that we did recently for this webinar. Of course, we did a lot of independent research that we have been benefiting from the help of Siemens, Mr. Eilers in particular, and also Mr. Tauchnitx at Sanofi and Mr. Jauslin at Novartis. This is the table of contents, and you will see that the first 2 points really try to give you a broad overview of what we believe today would be possible as an answer to the pressures that the pharmaceutical industry is under. Next, we will look at, so we'll identify a few things that will probably change the view of engineering and construction of pharmaceutical plants over the next few years. So we also identified what would be possible right away, and we will start with the good engineering practices that have been defined in the past by Thomas Tauchnitx for integrated process design, engineering, and plant operation. Tauchnitx and also Mr. Jauslin at Novartis found that the integration of asset information and compliance management makes a lot of sense. So we will try to explain that, and Mr. Jauslin will also explain how his vision of implementing that looks like today. From the testimonials of both Mr. Tauchnitx and Mr. Jauslin, I further identified what quantified benefits would be of applying these practices. So that I will be finishing with, and then I will hand over the word to Mr. Jauslin, who will speak about his and his company's experiences. Let me see if I can, yes, okay. So the first topic here is a medium-term view on developments in engineering and construction of pharmaceutical plants. As everyone is probably aware, there are lots of pressures on the pharmaceutical, or let's say life sciences industries, from consumers, from governments, from regulators, on quality, on price, and on safety of drugs. And one way to react on these pressures is to gain speed and reduce cost. A few years ago, in a seminar called the Tauchnitx seminar, a few people, creative people from the field, got together and defined an ambitious goal to reduce the development, engineering, construction, and commissioning time of plants by 50%. So they aim at halving that. And they define the principles of how to get at that goal by being fast, by using standardization and reuse, by managing profitability during the project, by avoiding perfectionism, by building relationships of trust, is another way to gain time, and maintaining continuity throughout the process. Now, and how far is this realistic? At that time, it seemed very futuristic, but it seems to make sense because the current trends are to produce smaller quantities, to introduce gradual improvements in product and process. That means that the process will change regularly. To respond flexibly to market demands, that will probably imply changing products and changing quantities regularly over time. And so being fast and not necessarily perfect in conceiving and constructing a plant could make a lot of sense within this context. Now, in the past years, we had an EU-sponsored project called F3 Factory, and that project introduced modular, additive, continuous production units. Today, we're used to batch production in great majority. This project tried to convert processes to continuous production. And it also aims at using small modular designs that will not be scaled up, but that will be added up. That means if you need more production, you add a small additional unit. And that, you can imagine, speeds up engineering enormously, because once you have engineered the pilot plant, then you have engineered all the plants. And those units are flexible and reconfigurable. So that's, in terms of production technology, construction and production, that would reduce enormously engineering, construction, and reconfiguration work. And so that goes in the direction of this 50%. And then very recently, and you can find this on YouTube, Novartis and MIT did a demonstration project that uses the same principles, it uses continuous production, and it showed that it was possible to halve the time to operational readiness. So this goal of 50% reducing the time to operational readiness is actually realistic. We'll probably need to gain some more experience over the next few years, but it is something that is within reach. Now, what will we be able to do today, right away? We can. Oh, sorry. We need to get back one slide. If you can help me, please, with that.
I'll take care of that, Valentin.
What we can do today is learn from the work that has been initiated by Dr. Thomas Tauchnitx at Sanofi. He published a vision in 2005 for integrated engineering, commissioning, construction, and operation. And the principles he defined was that every asset information should be generated and maintained at one single location. That all trades during the project should work with the same up-to-date information. Existing knowledge should be reused where possible, and that implied modular engineering methodologies. I will not dwell on it, but there is a very sophisticated methodology defined by Mr. Tauchnitx that everyone can adopt. However, it takes a little bit of time to adopt it. Another point that he came up with was that a risk assessment during the engineering can be very efficiently linked via requirements management to compliance management. So you design the plant, you identify the risks, and then you make a checklist of tests to do, and once these pass, and basically you have the compliance in a single environment. He also said asset information should be maintained and updated during operations. So after engineering, construction, and commissioning, the database should remain active and maintained both by operations and maintenance, again to have accurate information at every point in time, which also helps with the compliance requirement of having up-to-date information at every point in time. Also, Mr. Tauchnitx said that the asset design information should be used to generate systems like manufacturing operations management, sometimes called MES, or control systems like DCS. He suggested DCS configuration should be downloaded from the engineering environment and compiled locally and be independent. The information should be independent of the vendor. And then finally, he said a standard process across the extended enterprise should reduce rework, should reduce the number of systems, interfaces, and would support knowledge and asset management. So this is in very short the vision that Mr. Tauchnitx published in German in 2005, and in our paper we have the first time an English translation of the summary of that. And he implemented his vision over a few years in the Commos solution by Siemens. And he met many of his goals because reuse and a single location is an intrinsic property of the Commos environment. Mr. Eilers at the end of this webinar will give you a little bit more detail on the system. Novartis, for their part, had a similar philosophy, and they implemented paperless asset lifecycle documentation. Mr. Jaslin will talk about that a little bit more, so I will not take away his information, but maybe just as an additional information, Novartis has also used modular engineering and modular production methodologies in a recent plant construction, referring back to my first slide about the medium-term future. Also, they came independently to the same strategy to integrate asset information management and compliance management. And it is clear now why that makes a lot of sense. To implement that, Siemens added new functionality to Commos, and Mr. Jaslin will report a little bit more about that, both on the implementation to date and the strategy and the plans for the future. But the message is that a productized solution for integrated asset information management and compliance management is available today. Now, I collected information from both gentlemen, and both indicate in a very consistent way that there is a reduction in engineering efforts using these approaches and these type of systems by 10 to 20%. And I translated that to savings in terms of turnover using typical cost structures of the pharmaceutical industry, and a similar percentage per drug. So this is a significant saving in terms of engineering efforts. We also estimated in how far these engineering effort savings can translate into saving development time and shortening the time to operational readiness. And our estimation is that this is around 2 to 6% of the time, which could be between 3 or 7 months of development time of a 10 to 15 year development track for a life sciences product or pharmaceutical product. We also found that in some cases, depending on the industry, the type of product, where the construction is on the critical path, the time cannot be reclaimed to reduce the time. It is only effective in terms of reducing the effort. So it depends a little bit what type of products you make. In addition, there are benefits for operations and maintenance related to more accurate asset information through reduced effort of finding accurate data, shortening project times, which results in reducing cost and effort, and also compliance becomes less costly. So all in all, it is very, very likely that you can find very significant benefits in using these types of work processes and systems. For more details, I'd invite you to have a look at our white paper. And with this, I hand it over back to David for the rest of the webinar.
All right, Valentin, thanks very much for your presentation. Also, thanks for keeping exactly on time. We're right on schedule. So I just wanted to put out a reminder that you can submit questions now or anytime during the webinar using the questions panel on the right side. We'll collect the questions and pick out the best ones for our Q&A session that will come right after the third presentation. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Christoph Jauslin of Novartis. Christoph is Head of Engineering IT at Novartis, based in Basel in Switzerland, and he is going to talk about integrated engineering at Novartis and describe how Novartis has implemented electronic lifecycle documentation on a global level. Christoph, I'll turn it over to you now.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will give you a short overview about our implementation. As first point, the vision of Novartis. We are on the way to a fully electronic lifecycle documentation. That means that more and more data from projects, also from operational part, are stored on our integrated platform. And therefore, we need really tools where, like iPad or other pads, to get access to this information, to the latest information. And I think with this platform, with these possibilities, we can do it. I have an example here in production sites, what they are doing. They have such panels, such screens in the shop floor where they can have access to their data, and in this technology they can also do red lines, they can input commands, and are so in contact with the engineering department online. That's one of the examples. Okay, now for going this electronic way, you have to change the way of working. Simplifying engineering workflow is one of the thematics, the reducing of the number of interfaces. You see here a very complex picture of an engineering workflow with all the documentation which have to be created, with all the disciplines, and what is possible with such an integrated platform is a much simpler picture. You see here we have the Commos platform and we have the SAP beside for the maintenance. With such a concept, you can get data consistency. You have only a single point of input of data. Here you get the real integration with such a picture. But you need really to change the work of the way of working. What have we done? We have a centralized implementation. That means we have one database for all the sites. We have a global harmonized standard. So from China to California, we are using the same data model. A very high integration level, minimum of interfaces, and we try, by any rollout to sites, we try to migrate as much data as possible. If data are in electronic form, we can do it automatically. Otherwise, we do also redrafting in India. Where we are at the moment, we have a lot of modules of Commos in use. So all the process things like equipment definitions, PINIDs, E&I with loop diagrams, HVAC, and then the modular technology where I have some other slides. We have an SAP interface, and the full set is validated. We have an electronic signature possibility. That's all in. That's the engineering part, and we are then also using an integrated document management part, where we have also this qualification area, which I will explain a little later. Here a little landscape you see here from the US sites to the China sites. All the dark blue sites are rolled out. A specialty is in India, where you see here such an offshore office where we do design work for all the other sites. And it's going on. We have now next 4 sites which are planned for rolling out. Integration with COMOS, with SAP PM, e-calibration, we had to do a clear definition. What is the goal of the single tool? COMOS we have defined as master for engineering data. Any asset will be created in COMOS. Then we have a synchronization to SAP PM, and so all assets will be transferred to SAP, and in SAP maintenance tasks or maintenance plans and so on will be attached, and the maintenance part will be done in SAP. E-calibration, the paperless calibration, here once more we are transferring the assets to this calibration box, and here the calibration effort will be done. That's the way we are working in this integrated form. In projects, we start in a very early phase with the platform. We want to have the right data format in a very early phase, so that we can go forward to basic engineering, to detailed engineering, and we get then a full workflow through operations, and for retrofit they have then the same data available. That's the basic principle we have. And so for the globalization, in thinking of a project, just at the moment an actual project in Singapore, we have our centralized system. Basic engineering is working in Europe. Then we have a process engineering group in the US. We have our offshore office in Delhi, and we have an engineering group also in Singapore. And all these guys are working on one data model, using one data format and data creation in one integrated box. So we have no data copying and sending by email and so on. That's the principle of this global integration. And in this project we had a next requirement. We had 15 skid vendors which had also to input data. And what we have done here, we are using a web interface, so these companies can enter all the documentation for the specific skids through this web interface. So we have also the vendors, the main vendors, directly connected to the centralized box. In having a look which possibilities do we have in the operational phase, you see here our sites with COMOS. And for example, if the Californian site has a change request, they send the order to OSEC, to the offshore office. The offshore office is performing the job on a centralized platform, and the Californian guys have direct access then for checking and approving of the data. So no data will be sent by email or other tools. We have here an integrated work process on this centralized platform. To explain once more, the global core definition is very important. We won't have 1, 2, 3 different data models, so it's important to maintain this box on a global level. On the other hand side, we have some specialities like numbering systems and others in the sites which cannot be changed, so it needs also a specific area for some site definitions. this has to be reduced to a minimum. We are concentrating on the global core. Now I change to this modular technology. Modular technology needs also definitions and standardization. But at Novartis we have so-called best practice networks. These best practice networks are organized globally, and so guys from different sites are members of these best practice networks, and we have for all categories we have such networks, and these guys define the standards. So we have, as example, we have one for the chemical part, we have a biotech part, we have HVAC, we have mechanical, so different areas, and we are not only defining such a piece of graphics, we have data behind, we are defining assets, so we have, in principle, we have a piece of virtual plant. In having a look to such a picture, such a P&ID picture, it's not only these graphics, not only these components. At any of these components, we have an asset in the database and we have definitions beyond. So if we copy such a module, we are copying a piece of plant here on the right side. So that is the high quality of these modules, which we have here, process plus E&I in one box. And also in the definition of such a module, you find the design specification, you find the functional specification, E&I specification, and it ends with also test documentation. That's a full set of such a module. And I have now here one of the examples that is a P&ID of this biotech project, and you can see here if the next click how many modules were here copied together, and you see nearly anything on the drawing is out of a module. We have a main reactor and all the other parts are defined in modules. That is one of the best examples we have where module technologies was really used in detail. Okay. This thematic integration of also qualification, compliance management into the platform. You know, all the qualification tasks, it's really a lot of paper normally, and this effort, this paper effort, we wanted to integrate as into the same platform where we handle the engineering data. In having a look to the process, in the initiation and design part, we had quite a really good tool. We could use module technology. We have in all the phases, basic design, detailed design. We had our tools, and at the end of the process for maintenance, for maintaining the data, we could also use the platform. But here, especially in the qualification area, we had nothing. And so we started with a project to fill this big gap, and so this integrated compliance management part was developed together with Siemens. So it's a extended document management. We have workflow-based processes, test plan management, and a so-called risk-based approach. This box, that is the extension PQM in COMOS, which is existent. We had also part MROM, which we had to extend. At the moment, we have these electronic workflows with mail notification in use. We have a task management in use, document scheduling with Matrix, a document catalog, multiple electronic signatures, quality need assessment integrated, and out of this also progress reporting, which documents are created and so on. That is in use, that is now in different projects in use. And now we want to go a step forward. You see here the different phases of a project with all the documents, which will be more and more and more. And now the decision was how to deal with all the qualification documentation. Is it possible to also integrate it into this part? And we saw no, in principle we need something in parallel. So we have a parallel structure where we have the qualification phases, design qualification, IQ, OQ, PQ, and the qualification documents are generated here in this box. But the engineering documents are linked into this area. Though the engineer here has still his life cycle area with the engineering documents, and the qualification guys, they have all their quality relevant documents in a parallel box. That's the principle of this PQM on COMOS. In the next phase, we will it will be extended with test plan management, progress tracking of the qualification activities, automatic creation of IQ checkout sheets, deviation management. These activities are at the moment in development, and later on, that should be 2014, we will also have so-called content management. Their URS, FS, and so on are divided in blocks where we have then a full traceability of all the detailed items. So that was our way forward with the application integration, data integration, global integration, and now the next step we say business process integration for this qualification on the platform. For all these processes we have to work very intensively with our business guys, because it means changing of the work processes. And as you heard before, with these activities all integrated and rolled out, we see a reduction of engineering hours of 20 to 25% overall. Okay, that's it in a very, very short way. Thank you very much.
All right, Christoph, thanks very much for your presentation. That was really interesting. Thanks for sharing it with us. Before we get on to our third presentation, I just want to put out another reminder that you can submit questions, as I mentioned before, using the panel on the right-hand side, and we will address those questions during the Q&A session immediately following the next short presentation. I would like now to turn over to Mr. Joachim Eilers of Siemens. Joachim is going to summarize how integrated lifecycle management can be enabled using COMOS, and we'll talk about how COMOS can ensure data consistency and data reuse and what business benefits are associated with that. So I'll turn it over to Joachim now.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome to everyone in the meeting. And thank you to the presenter, which have already more or less presented the main story, and my job is now to really wrap it up and kind of make a circle around it. What we will see in the last part of this webinar, before we enter into the question answer round, is how COMOS from Siemens will enable the integrated lifecycle management, how data consistency throughout the global unique object orientation, what does this mean, and what is the way to enable the reuse by standardization. We have seen here some examples from the modular technology, and I think I will explain this in context of the environment where this was established. At the end, we make some business value consideration. We have already seen some numbers in Valentine's and as well in Christoph's presentation, and I try to summarize it in here. As a short explanation, COMOS will be sold by Siemens over a separate route. This is the Siemens industry software route, and our portfolio is obviously our software solution, which we will
dive into a little bit more detail in the next slides. But we have as well in our portfolio, obviously, project management and consulting to implement the product properly, training, as well as customer support. And this is more focused, obviously, on the process industry. To summarize a little bit, what is the challenge? We will start here to review a little bit, for example, in the bio API plant, and have a review to a fermentation, and what does it mean to exchange something here. For example, if the pH meter will be exchanged, for example, on a request from a change request, then you need to review first of all the specification if something needs to be rewritten, or and if you only exchange something, obviously you need to implement and plan the implementation and the realization. For example, exchange of a pH meter, and you must do the exchange of this pH meter, and obviously you need to verify what you have done, and this needs to be according to the specification which you have defined upfront, and this needs to be reported and documented properly and reviewed and approved according to the guidelines. And if we review this in a current environment, and that's more or less the starting point from Novartis as well, and this is very similar to the starting point of other companies, not only pharmaceutical companies, but we see the different disciplines from process design into more or less into the operations part, and we see this obviously in the engineering arena and resulting then in the operation area. And for example, the implementation of a new project, this will take 2 years, 3 years maximum, but if you then doing your operation, you will have operation mode up to 20 years and longer. And obviously, if you have the data integrity not established over this long period of time, the issues which are raising out of this will raise over time. And yeah, what could be done, and that's explained already very well in the presentation of Christoph. What you need to do is you need to reduce barriers between the systems and departments. You need to enable and enhancements across disciplines, and to integrate the compliance information. During the analysis, I think it was a big question: could we reduce time to production? And obviously, it is possible if you really have a big eye on the compliance information which you need to follow. And if you have this integrated, then there is a chance to really hasten and speed up over time. Let's review this in context of the system. That's the picture where it is shown that you need that you have all of the barriers between the different departments. And our approach is really to have everything on one environment. And the example from Novartis was mainly in the engineering area, but it was completely across the complete operation lifetime. If something needs to be changed, then the data is every time up to date, and you don't need to search if you have the right data and so on. This introduced obviously the reduction of number of applications. It enables a single information hub and obviously enhance the security and safe operations at the end. To focus, and that's maybe sorry, I will get back. The point which I would like to make is our customers, they start with implementations for example, very often in the engineering phase, but we have as well several customers which are focusing more on the operating phase. It is highly important to identify where the best need and the best advantage for the customer, for you, where to start, and then we will find out and have a plan to implement the environment in a proper way. What does object orientation mean and data consistency? One main concept of COMOS is really having the information entered only once, and this entering information is handled in a so-called object. And the object is done on the most granular level, how it is required. For example, a tag ID, it is entered very often first time in the process engineering phase, in the basic engineering, and then you can reuse this information across the engineering disciplines over commissioning into operations. And if you have changes, all of the resulting changes could be identified very easily. And that's our main architecture, and this obviously will save and has potential to save across all of the life cycles of the phase, in the CapEx phase, handover, as well as in the operation phase. With respect to standardization, we have seen the modular technology in Novartis, and COMOS will not define how you will standardize, but it will give you a shuttle that you are able to standardize and how you would and how you have defined it, and then give the different plants and engineering sites the ability to really reuse the already existing information. And I think that is something where really you can save money at the end. And this is not possible for portions of the plant. You can do this with complete plant environments, depending on how deep your implementation is here. Next point is a very strong functionality. It's called layer technology, and the layer technology supports very good the change control, because if you have, for example, established an environment and now you need to do some changes, in COMOS you can establish a new layer, doing the changes on the layer, and you see this on the pictures on the bottom. All changes are visually highlighted, therefore you can identify very fast what has been changed, and you can document this in the complete documentation of the change. Very strong feature here. The glue between all the things, I say, is a workflow, and Novartis is using as well this task management functionality. That means you defining the task, what needs to be done, and the system ensures that the task will be delivered to across the different workflows to the right persons. And to explain this a little bit more in detail, before you have a project, and for example, it could be a greenfield project, which is very big and a big planning effort. You could have a modernization, a revamp, and depending on which kind of project, you can choose a document catalog. That's already a predefined set of information and documents which need to be filled out, and you can assign directly a team list to it. Roles, for example, you assign to the roles user, as well as you say, okay, which role have in my organization or in my project which responsibility, and who needs to review, approve, or create the document. This is, I think, standard project management functionality, but in COMOS you are able, and we have seen this in Christoph Jausin's presentation very good, you can automatically link the plant information to the project information and don't need to copy it around, and that's a very important thing to do. In addition, it is, if you have already defined the framework of this project, you need only to enter the milestones when you need to deliver what, and then you have a good and strong tool to really have project tracking functionality established. To review again our example of the pH meter, in context of a change request, as well as if you do the fermentation completely new, you need to identify what are my main risks. For example, I have a system, and is my system contacting my API, my active pharmaceutical ingredient? If it is in contact, then it is obviously quality relevant and qualification relevant, and then additional information and documentation needs to be filled out. This risk assessment could be done inside of COMOS, and this will already be used in Novartis. To summarize, obviously, to come to the summarize, we will have a short view on the portfolio. COMOS is based on a platform which could be implemented worldwide. On this platform, you have the different disciplines like COMOS process, automation, and operation with the different functionalities. And as surrounding element, you have COMOS Lifecycle, and this includes, for example, our functionality around project quality management, what you have seen just before. But at the end, it is very important for you. What is really the important thing is COMOS is a lever for you to have a single source of information to enable the reuse by standardization, have an efficient lifecycle, asset lifecycle management. You can embed your compliance management in the engineering and operation environment, and which is an enabler for a complete paperless electronic lifecycle. And this enables you to have an ongoing plant optimization. And this will obviously reduce your cost. And very important thing is you can, with this technology, retain key knowledge. You don't need to redo everything every time, which this obviously enhances production and production quality, reduce the risk of non-compliance, and depending on where you are, it could shorten the time to market a little bit, and it will definitely higher your flexibility. That's our main point in our current industrial environment, what we think you need to solve, and we are willing to help you. Thank you.
That was great the way you summarized a lot of stuff that Christoph had mentioned as well before about COMOS and its capabilities. I'm going to open the floor now for questions. I'm going to start with Christoph, and Christoph, on your list, it's the third question down. I'd like to begin with that one on integrated risk management. The question is, can you describe briefly how integrated risk management as a part of compliance management works in Novartis, and how this will change using the new modules?
Okay, as the requirements for qualification get higher and higher and higher, so with risk management we want to reduce this effort to only the assets where it is really needed. And but this is quite complex, and so with PQM, with this electronic approach for performing this risk management, we have a tool for really easy administration of all these activities. It gives really transparency and for the whole process.
You mentioned in one of your slides the plant in Singapore, and somebody asked if COMOS has been used for the new modular vaccines plant in Singapore.
Yeah, so the Singapore project is one of the biggest greenfield projects we ever had on COMOS. And as I showed you, this modular technology was really used in detail with big success for all the planning. We will have for this plant, I would say it's one of the first plants where we have nearly a full electronic documentation just at the end of the project, and we can do then this electronic handover on the same platform. That's big advantage to all our projects we had in the past with different vendors with different formats. So here we have it prepared during the project phase and can transfer it then to the operational part.
Thanks, Christoph. I've got another question from the audience. This can go to either of you. You can decide who can best answer this. How do you trace the origin of requirements? For example, regulatory, filling, design, run-in validation, or change probably engineering changes. How are the origins of requirements traced?
It's a little bit depending. On one of the slides of Christoph, it is mentioned that the traceability elements we will have as one of our next portions. That means the full traceability of the requirements into the elements where the realization takes place. Currently, it is handled by documents inside the system.
Joachim, we have another question here about implementation time and resources. Can you give some indications on implementation in terms of time and resources?
Obviously, that's very, very high depending on what you would like to do. Normally, we come to the companies identifying them together with the companies where are a field of activities, and then we will find out elements which could be established rather soon. That means if you follow, if you did not kind of change the out-of-the-box environment so much, it is possible to be online within the 3 to 6 months on a certain range. Obviously, such implementation like Novartis in a full extent could take longer, up to a few years, but nevertheless, it should be. We should first can make a boundary around what you would like to do, and then set up portions which enables you to use the software as fast as possible on a smaller range, and then extend as required.
Yeah. Also for Joachim, how do you handle software and configuration updates?
We have regular software releases, and obviously you have upward compatibility every time guaranteed, and it's a little bit depending on new functionality. If you use the standard in COMOS, then it is in that way that you should be able, maybe with a short online session, to use a new environment ongoing. If there are new functionality which requires a little bit more knowledge, then the companies normally decide to have anyhow a small update webinar training style, or if it's a little bit more kind of short training courses. But that's depending a little bit on how many changes you would like to implement during a release change. If you only using the normal, the same functionality as you have used before, it should a very low requirement here to train you people again.
I've got one final question, and then we'll end the webinar right on time. This one is for Christoph. Can you cite some user testimonials in development and operations? Has any of the users in the plant made comments or statements that you can share with our audience?
Okay, I think single source of information is one of the main statements we get. Although the guys outside, they had always the problem to maintain their data. They had an E&I box, they had the pinned ID box, they had a maintenance system beside. So we normally had the data split it out to 4 or 5 systems, and so the maintenance of the data was a big issue. And the guys are really happy now to have the data at one place. They can maintain the data once. It is transferred automatically from COMOS to the SAP system. So in that area we have real positive statements from the guys from the operations.
Very good. Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to find out more information, in particular if you'd like to have a copy of the white paper, You can download it at the following site you see on the screen now. It's you can go to siemens.com/comos, or you can contact us at ARC directly, and we'd be happy to send you a free copy. This now ends today's webinar. I would like to thank our audience for participating, for attending, and for the questions, and our panel for taking the time to share this valuable information with us.